consciousness hacking is a global community. We have about 30 plus chapters. And so it's pretty cool, they keep kind of opening up, and it's been a very organic process. And my sense of the reason why we've gone from 1 to 30, in spite of my total ineptitude and lack of skills in business here, is because we're hitting some kind of nerve. In one way of saying it, I think people are really interested in how we can support connection, transformation, the elevation of consciousness in this modern context. Not in conflict with technology, not with top technology as this adversary that we need to cope with and figure out how to manage, but where technology and our modern environment is actually designed to be healthy, is designed to be nurturing, is actually designed to support the deep and meaningful connection that we need to thrive as human beings. And I deeply believe in that possibility. And I think many of the people that are showing up in the community have a sense that there's a really deep human potential, and they're interested in how that human potential can be supported in this modern world. Really excited to introduce Tim Chang. I remember the first time I met Tim, we were at Burning Man, which is where a lot of great meetings happen. And actually we were both asked to be on stage for a panel discussion. It was definitely not your typical panel discussion. I remember a lot of naked people and a lot of people that definitely were not sober, you could say that. It's great because you can just blow their mind. It's amazing. But I remember sitting next to Tim and my mind being blown by him, and I was sober at that moment. And that was my first impression of Tim, of just, wow, this is a really cool guy with an incredibly deep, nuanced, and relevant perspective on entrepreneurship, on technology, and on so many of the exponential technologies that are emerging into the space, and a deep understanding of how all those things fit into the larger human system. And then, of course, I found out that Tim is in a band, and he plays music, and that Tim is like really buff. He's just like really like a totally buff guy, and just lives this amazing life. His wife is amazing, has a beautiful daughter, and so I kind of developed a little bit of like a man crush on Tim. I just think he's so cool. I really like you. I'm sort of it's embarrassing to say, but he's one of the cooler people that I know, and we're lucky to have Tim because he tends to be the keynote speaker at conferences that attract thousands and thousands of people, and he's really generous to donate his time with us today. And so thank you so much, Tim, for being here, and it's an honor to have you.
First of all, I just want to offer my gratitude and appreciation to each of you for the work and interest you have in this area. Beyond just kind of a hobby or something that's of interest, I kind of think it's crucial to the survival of our species, not to be too dramatic about it. But this topic tonight is a little funky for me because it's kind of like trying to thread the needle of two things that I normally wouldn't have associated: business and consciousness. Making profits, building unicorns, on the other hand, expanding your consciousness, ego death, interconnection, authenticity, vulnerability. Where do they fit together? As a caveat, I am a product of the traditional sandhill VC system. 20 years in the industry, I've come up through the traditional world, the original .com boom, the implosion, the Web 2.0 wave, social media, all these things. I've lived and breathed that world, funded a lot of companies that were in that succeeded in that. And in many ways, my journey now, I kind of joke that I'm sort of half VC and probably half hippie by now, thanks to Burning Man as one of the opening portals into that. But what I really step back and see is how to fit the two together in a way. Just because you maybe are building something for profit doesn't mean it has to be at the expense of impact or consciousness. And just because you're working on something that is in sort of an off-Broadway realm, like consciousness or mindfulness or spirituality, doesn't mean that it has to only be something that could be an impact business, a lifestyle one, or a nonprofit. There are ways that you could make it sustainable. So I guess the angle I'd like to share, if it's helpful to everyone, is how to use these business models to make them sustainable. What I mean by that is, for the most interesting conscious hacking project you come up with, it could be very novel, it could be transformational for people's lives, but if you can't sustain it, you might need nonprofit funding for it, you might need grants, you might be literally begging for money to keep it alive. And in that way, it's not sustainable. So to have the biggest impact on many people, you want it to be able to sustain itself in terms of the economics, in terms of viability. So I'm going to try to share with you sort of patterns and lessons we've seen from over probably about 3,000 or 4,000 companies now over the last kind of 20 years, and the patterns that have emerged and why it's so ripe for today. This is all kind of work in progress. I don't have a lot of the answers, and your mileage may vary, so I'm not going to try to be too prescriptive, but whatever I've seen, I'd like to share with you in case it inspires some things, okay? So just a bit about Mayfield. Mayfield is actually one of the first venture capital firms in the world. It started back in 1969 in the early stage world when VC first got started. When venture capital firms got started, it was because back then, if you were an entrepreneur, you used to have to go to a local bank to get a loan to start a business, and they would say, no revenue, no proven team, forget it. And so the government kicked off this thing called the Small Business Investment Program, where they would match dollars for investors to go empower entrepreneurs to go build things. This started the venture capital industry, and Mayfield was there very early on. Been around almost 50 years, definitely trying to focus on investing in good people. We invest in the really early stage, so that's usually just after seed, maybe usually Series A. Sometimes it's literally people with just a napkin and an idea, or not even an idea at all. Dating back, it's all the way back to old school names like Atari and Genentech, and more recent ones you may have heard of would be companies like Lyft. We invested when they were Zimride, and they were on the verge of totally failing, and then they decided to put a mustache on the car, and somehow it worked. Companies like ClassPass, Massdrop, these are in sort of the e-commerce and shopping categories. My friend Alon is here from Poshmark, which is a fantastic community-driven commerce fashion company. And then some more out there bets. I made an investment in a company called Lumosity almost 7-8 years ago when people said, brain training, is that a thing? And it was really interesting to see the lessons learned from them scaling up to 1 million paid subscribers, doing north of 100 million of subscription revenue a year. And then what happens if you don't position it right and the FTC comes after you for how you might position the company. So some lessons there. At the bottom here, this was one of the very first wearables companies that could do galvanic skin response, continuous heart rate, motion, even motion categorization called BASIS. And I remember back then, the term wearables wasn't around, so the big question everyone asked me is, who the hell wants to wear a device to track their body signals? And now it's kind of interesting how mainstream it is. A lot of interesting lessons there. There's a company right here called Tripp, and this is something I'm really passionate about. And it's kind of a funny joke that it's Tripp with 2 Ps. On the VR conference circuit, I've been saying, I don't think the killer app is games or Netflix and VR. I want net trips. I want somebody who can give me the benefits of a 5-MeO DMT journey without having to take anything. And so when Nanea Reeves pitched me this exact idea, I was like, this makes total sense. And the best irony of all, she's Keanu Reeves' cousin. And she's the one who introduced Neo to the actual Matrix. So he hadn't tried VR until. So he tried it, and then he was the first angel investor, so it's kind of cool. I got to follow Neo into investing in using VR to hack your perception. Other interesting ones, consumer brand products. Dave Asprey's Bulletproof Exec, Jeff Wu's Human with ketone esters. These are sort of next-gen foods. For sort of biohacking, so that's an area I've known pretty well too. So we've seen some interesting companies that are kind of dancing around the edge of consciousness or quantified self, quantified life, and so there'll be some lessons I can share with you from there. So a bit about me, my own story. This might give you a view as to sort of my perspective on things. I grew up in this hand-shaped state of Michigan back in 1984, so my dad brought home this thing, and I said, what is that? He said, it's a computer. I said, cool, I want to play games. And then he said, it's 1984, there's no game companies. And he chucked an AppleSoft manual at me and said, learn to make them yourself. So I learned to code because I wanted to play these things. So my youth was spent, in addition to Dungeons and Dragons, spent hours in front of these screens with little made-up characters like this with all their statistics. This is what's known as an RPG, or a role-playing game. where you basically craft little alternative personas and spend hours min-maxing which stat that you want. If you're a fighter, you max on strength. If you are a wizard, you max on intelligence, and you have to trade off all these other traits. It got to the point where I felt like I knew my RPG character better than I knew myself. And then it dawned on me one day, I remember thinking, how come we don't spend as much time mastering and optimizing our real lives as our game characters? So that kind of woke me up to the idea of gamification, where you could treat and track the stats in your life similar to a game, because what is life but a game? My other big passion was comic books and superheroes. And what I always think about comic books and superheroes, there was always room in the pantheon for another superhero. Always kind of a new name, a new outfit, and no one ever copied anybody. They were all unique. They all had their own little individual superpower. And so what I thought was kind of cool was that most of their superpowers were usually born of surviving some life-threatening trauma. So there was some horrible challenge that managed not to kill them, and they came up with, whether it was a radioactive spider or Krypton being destroyed or whatever it was, something would give them a superpower which became their identity that they would use of service back to this whole universe. The other big factor for me was being chained to the piano involuntarily by fierce Asian tiger parents while learning to play classical piano for the purpose of competitive recitals. So I got to know this gentleman really, really well, even though I didn't relate to any of his music and didn't know why I was playing it. But what changed my life is when I saw this movie, and Back to the Future, Marty McFly discovers rock guitar, brings it back, introduces it to the world, and just becomes the star. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be the piano guy. I want to be him. So to my parents' chagrin, I quit piano, picked up guitar, taught myself guitar, and spent years embarking on a whole side career in rock music and funk and hip hop and whatnot, until fast forward today, we have a weird total mutant band called Black Mahal, which is a Punjabi hip hop funk collective. So somehow it works, but it's kind of funny. It's a reminiscent of that superhero league where everybody's this weird little superpower. The guy in the middle is almost the George Clinton of India. He's a famous legendary dole drummer, plays traditional dole drum music. Person next to him is a champion battle scratch DJ, old vinyl, and we've got funk drummers, all sorts of things, and it somehow kind of works in a weird way when you put it all together, and I never would have expected it. So it's kind of fun. We've gotten the opportunity to play at the Vancouver Winter Olympics and Montreal Jazz Fest and all these things I never would have dreamed of before. And it was because I think we mashed up a bunch of elements. It was kind of like music hacking, like consciousness hacking. And then the big one for me is this place. So the playa is kind of like a physicalized virtual world to me, and this is where we are all the best versions of our 10-year-old selves. This is where you really do dress like the superhero you want to be. And what's beautiful to me is the taste of what happens when there is no money, when it's a gift economy. So we'll keep that in mind as we talk about business models. So the areas of investment I look at, it's really looking at what's coming around the corner. We are in the midst of reinventing everything under the sun, the future of work. It's said that probably 40 to 50% of our entire workforce will be freelancers within the next 10 years, not working for the man, not working for big companies. We have the future of shopping. We've got commerce giving way to communities. We've got curators instead of buyers and merchandisers. We have influencers instead of advertising. The future of health and wellness, we need to figure out what is fitness, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. And this is sort of the area that I think we're all working on, hacking the so-called new consciousness technology tech stack. The future of media and marketing, this is a hot topic as Facebook has been weaponized and hacked. We need to look at ways to unhack, de-weaponize, and reinvent what media and advertising is itself. The future of play, this is where things like virtual reality, augmented reality literally change our perception, our grasp, our ability to create the reality around us. The future of homes and households, we've got smart homes and robotics coming in. We've got personal smart agents and chatbots. The bigger picture one that I'm really thinking about, though, is the backdrop to all of this. We're about to transform the future of money. Maybe with things like blockchain and crypto, rewrite what is capitalism, maybe reboot democracy itself. We're redefining what families are. Neo-tribalism may be the new model instead of the nuclear family. We've got cities and nation states that are in transition. The notion of nation states themselves may be obsolete. We may see the world's first virtual digital nation states being crowdfunded by ICOs soon. We may see a corporation like Amazon go sovereign in space. We have seen all these trends right around the corner, and this very much is talking about the future of humanity being transformed right now. Something I like to say, why I go to Burning Man, come to places like this, Maker Faire, evolution occurs at the edges, these messy, sort of off-Broadway places, and then it makes its way into the core. So I like to say, pay attention to those geeks, the freaks, the pipsqueaks, for someday they will be the chic, and that's you guys. All right, so what are we looking at here? What are the key trends to pay attention to that you can harness in your hacking as well as building these into sustainable businesses? Step one is we've got eyes everywhere now. We are going to have computer vision. We're going to have seeing systems that go mainstream. Everything will grow a pair of eyes because cameras are so dirt cheap now. And that this will allow devices, systems, networks to be able to visually process things, watching all the time. When you combine that with AI, neurobiology, physics, you're going to be able to build massive new companies out of interpreting and seeing the world in different spectrums, not just visual spectrum, but also infrared, thermal, all sorts of other areas that you can see the world through. The next nuance, the next Google Maps will emerge from this in parsing visual understanding of the world. We also have voice, ears and mouths everywhere. Apple Siri, that started it, but already Amazon's Alexa has kicked its ass and is moving even faster and going mainstream. The existing behaviors, we've got things like search and shopping and all of that, and that's great for initial adoption, but watch what kids do with Alexa. It's so much fun to see my 5-year-old Ariel and what she thinks Alexa can do and the way she converses. That's a hint to how young users will create new apps and behaviors with voice. What we're going to be going towards soon, do you remember computer from Star Trek, right? That is the new computer. There's no interface. Jarvis from Iron Man, my favorite. Scarlett Johansson has her operating system in the movie Her. These are all being built in real time. There's a new term, you've heard of the cloud, everything's in the cloud now. There's kind of a framework we're saying now that next comes this intelligent fog of droplets that are all interconnected like this new kind of mesh network. IoT-enabled devices that push the cloud back towards the edge of the network. It's all around you, it's pervasive. So you have network connectivity, meaning that there's smarts everywhere. A smart grid, smart city, smart buildings, smart home, smart car. This could lead to everything from hearables, wearables, ingestibles, all sorts of things as we network different sensors that go in and all around you. Blockchain is now moved beyond just Bitcoin, just a way to get Lambos and make some fast money. These distributed ledgers are so important because they are transforming infrastructure for major industries. And yeah, I'm maybe a bit of a crypto-libertarian at heart, but it really, I think, is a chance to reboot what corporate structures are. There's something I think that's really dangerous right now about the way business works, and this is almost me as a reformed capitalist, but the problem is, I think we have a failed experiment. If you take for-profit economics only, combined with the winner-take-all nature of digital technologies, what you have is centralization of resources to the point that probably 90% of the resources end up in the hands of like 5 dozen people over time if you extrapolate it. That's already happening also, especially because AI and data are the new oil and gold. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Alibaba, Tencent, they're probably more powerful than most nation states, and not even probably the NSA could catch up because they have all the data, the proprietary data, and these digital business models which centralize everything. So maybe the only way to do it is to blow it to smithereens, make it atomic, decentralize that whole thing. I'm hoping that, you know, maybe somebody someday, if they really want to be a baller, sort of a philanthropist, somebody, if they had the power to do this, Jack Dorsey would come along and say, you know what, I'm going to turn Twitter inside out. It's now Twitter coin. There is no corporation. All shareholders get coin. Like that, to me, would be the ultimate baller move of how we move past this death trap of centralization that we have with Facebook and things like that. Machine learning, the era of not just predictive analytics has arrived, but we've got smart algorithms trained on massive real-time data pools they never had access to before at computing costs that are cheaper than ever. Machine learning algorithms have been around forever, but it's because of the cheapness of the compute and the size of the big data pools that now it's really, really relevant. As a result, the new scarce resources we're going to fight the next wars over are basically proprietary data pools and AI talent. What's very frightening to me as a venture capitalist, I'm here to empower you guys, entrepreneurs, to build new companies that can be the new leaders. But the problem is, in AI, every single hotshot PhD AI team is immediately scooped up by Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Baidu, Tencent. They're basically wholesale acquiring all these teams. And that's pretty terrifying to me because they already have the data pools. If they also have all of the PhD talent from the top 6 PhD universities in the world, it's almost like another level of monopoly that we have to be even more terrified of. And if we're shifting to a world where machine learning is a core competency, how are you going to hire these people for your own company itself, right? So what I'm really worried about is that winner-take-all dynamic, and so that's why we have to move towards how we decentralize this and reinvent STEM education, even in emerging worlds, so that all kids have a chance to learn things like decentralized development, machine learning, et cetera, right? With machine learning, AI, big question of is it bad, is it good? The answer, neither and both. Technology is neither good nor bad. It's just a tool. All that matters is the intention, the energy you bring to it. Whatever you want to do with it, it'll represent. It's just like what Mikey said. The company you build is an expression of you, right? So yes, we can and will likely build both Skynet and Digital Pocket Buddha. AR, VR, this is pretty interesting to me. Yes, the head-mounted displays are pretty early, but mobile VR on your phone is already here, and that's what's going to hit the market first. Of course, the first applications are usually games, cinema, that sort of thing, but then we're going to see money being made when enterprise applications with VR really picks up. And we're going to have the next Atari, the next YouTube, the next Google, all these things built VR natively. Oh, by the way, who saw Ready Player One? That was pretty good, right? It's pretty interesting. Genomics, Mayfield is starting to dabble in this area. Have you heard of CRISPR-Cas9? Now there's CRISPR-Cas13 for diagnostics. We just invested in a company called Mammoth Diagnostics. Imagine being able to spit on a sheet of paper that's actually an assay of all different types of biomarker readings. And with that one drop of blood or little drop of spit, suddenly you can detect hundreds of different things all in a sheet of paper that you could ship to emerging market countries at pennies per sheet. So it's things like that. When the collision of this compute power with biology happens, we're going to be able to literally copy, edit, paste, genetic code. This leads to things like precision wellness, not just in healthcare, but in managing and optimizing your lifestyle. Seriously, between AI, blockchain, and genomics, I think these are really the ultimate three things we have to look at, and they could be our final inventions in many ways if we're not careful about how we harness them. So conversational interfaces, I'm really big on this notion of smart agents, and this will be kind of a business model I'll talk to as well. But did you know the average number of apps that each person downloads once you set up your new phone is 0, despite 10,000 new apps in the App Store every day? So what we're moving towards is actually everything going more towards appless apps. Everything's becoming intertwined with messaging and chat. Those two are the stickiest ones of all. And in China, WeChat has recreated the entire internet just in a messaging format. So we're going to probably see more of that here. And where that gets to is when you plug in NLP, AI, neural networks, you can have conversational chatbots and agents that start to do things for you. So instead of the Google search bar or other little buttons that you press, it'll become much more natural. And what I really am excited about is the computer will be predicting things for you, getting to know you. And yes, it's a little bit creepy, but it could be basically learning you better than you know yourself. What if it was Tindering for you? Then the other big topic. Here come the robots, here comes the AI, and there go the jobs. The thing is, yes, we're probably going to see easily 50% of most jobs being automated away. So really, our job is we have to create new types of work. And I'll give you my solution towards what I think that will be after AI gets rid of most jobs. Honestly, guys, I think my job could probably be done better than AI, by an AI. AI augmented humans. So this is something I'm kind of excited about. Maybe it's a bit Pollyannish, but I think that AI is here to help augment us if we want them to be. Yes, it will replace some jobs, but I'd like to think that maybe AI can help us offload the tedious stuff and free us to have more capacity to do more work. So instead of 100 call center agents tediously dealing one call at a time, they can support thousands at once, aided by AI that's helping automate some of the front end and the back end of it. So basically, the one big business opportunity is how many times do you feel like you are overloaded by choices? Even when you turn on Netflix, like there's so much stuff. So there's a theme I think of a lot, AI decision offload. Go research that thing for me. Tell me what to do. I watch a lot of Generation Z folks, and they hate the notion of having to make choices, because every choice you make is cognitive load. It consumes cycles. I've noticed I've been doing this at home lately. Like, I want to just relax at the end of the day, and I turn on Netflix. I spend 30 minutes scrolling through the choices. I never actually watch anything, and then I just go to bed. And you probably had the same experience if you surf Amazon to go buy something. Like, try searching red shoes on Amazon. Do you need 1,000 pages of results? Probably not. So we're going to need more and more, basically, AI decision offload support engines to help us figure out what to eat, how to exercise, how to spend our money, how to invest it, how to parent, all of these things. And then this is my soapbox. We are now in the adolescent critical stage of technology. Technology is this wonderful invention of our prefrontal cortexes we've created to have an abundance of choices. We are in peak TV, peak content, peak game, peak calories, peak everything. The rest of our brain, the reptile limbic brain, the monkey brain, it's designed for scarcity survival. It wants max calories, it wants max novelty, it wants max sex, it wants max distraction. So when you plug those two together, a monkey and reptile brain surrounded by infinite choices that this digital technology has created, you're probably going to get a little bit of impedance mismatch. So stage one of our technology is created with these wonderful choices. Stage two of our technology is we need it to rescue us from our own impulses. We need it to bring us past sort of the impulses that we're unable to control, whether it's our taste buds or our wallets, our penises, all these sorts of things, right? So, you know, in one way, people say, you sound like you want a digital nanny. Maybe. I mean, that's what good parenting is. I'd like for Alexa to be able to say, Tim, it's 11 o'clock. Your calendar says tomorrow your first meeting is at 7:30. You said you want 8 hours of sleep. I know you're binge watching Game of Thrones season 8. Go to sleep now. I'm turning out power to the house. Now, the difference with that is I told Alexa what I want. I set up the goal and it helps me get there. So that's what I mean by the aspirational part of this technology, where it's helping us be the better versions of ourselves, because honestly, we don't have the discipline, willpower, or resources to control ourselves anymore with all these infinite choices. All right, so what's going on here? What's around the corner? And is this all gloom and doom? There's something that's kind of cool, that this wonderful business opportunity, and I think millennials actually have tapped into this. They recognize that access is more important than ownership, that experiences is better than buying more stuff, that stories supersede brands, that purchases aren't just utility or discounts, they're each kind of a personal self-expression or personal branding moment, that brands owned by the communities are more powerful than those dictated by marketers, that there are no market segments, there's now tribes instead. Yes, it's true. They're all snowflakes, they're all special, and they're all about the selfie kind of thing. Everything is awesome all the time, and if it's not Instagrammed, it didn't count. But they are also going to be the next generation of the digital freelancers, these digital nomads that don't claim home in any one place, that wander the world and are equally happy in Tulum or Paris or Moscow. Bigger question. If ownership does equate to burden, like many of us now know, how do we free ourselves from this self-imposed prison of possession? How do we move beyond just an economy fueled by quote-unquote growth, where we're trying to produce more stuff, sell more stuff, consume more stuff, that then crowd up all our garages, our basements, our kitchens, and then we end up with more stuff that ultimately makes us more unhappy? Has anyone here read Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up? It's a wonderful philosophy. I've been in mid-purge mode now, and I love when I move because it's an excuse to say to my wife, let's get rid of everything. And it's so freeing to get rid of stuff. And so I think that we're entering this era, and this notion of this post-consumption economy is something that's very powerful. Even shopping, we've got this notion of commerce, and yet Amazon and Alibaba are decimating mom and pop stores. We've got this oversupply of too many choices that we need to pare down to just a few personalized recommendations that maybe concierges or computers know what you want better than you. We are seeing enthusiasts and communities rise up across areas. Something I like to say, every one of you is an enthusiast about something. You're passionate about something. It could be vintage sneakers, it could be collector vinyl, it could be protein bars that are gluten-free. Whatever it is, there's something you know a lot about, and you love demonstrating that you know it, and you love learning more about that. And so that's sort of the story, the magic, the superpower you want to be able to bring out in every person. And what's interesting, when you're an enthusiast about something, you don't just buy it. You're not just looking for a discount. You're looking for a story to tell behind it. How did you find it? What does it mean to you? How do you show it off? This is why Whole Foods exists. You go in there and it's not just honey. There's 30 types of honey, right? And then you'll buy the one that's $15 because it's made by bees that practice tantric yoga in Portland or whatever. And so you put the honey on the table because you're waiting for a friend to come over and ask, what's up with the $15 honey? And then you say, it's made by tantric bees in Portland. And then that says something about you, right? So that's what I meant by this notion that it's like not just commerce, it's me commerce. Everything you buy is a story about you and is an expression of yourself, right? We're seeing now commerce automation. Every item can be sold by every retailer on every storefront. A blog is a storefront. An Instagram influencer is a storefront. A YouTube video is a storefront. So that's great, but bigger question. This addiction to growth in our economy, there's a wonderful TED Talk about this where, I remember this point, it was really interesting. We all expect infinite up and to the right growth forever for everything. We produce more, we sell more, we get more profit, we get more stock prices, things rise up. Problem is there's no limit to that. The only thing that grows infinitely in nature is cancer. Cancer eventually kills its host organism. So perhaps we need to rethink what in the world are the metrics we're looking at. So back to that notion of this talk of sustainable business models, just ever increasing scale and valuation might not actually be the most mindful or conscious business model of all. There may be new KPIs we have to invent about reuse, yield, or active usage rates, things that are more about the sustainable sharing of this economy. There's terms like donut economics, where it's about reuse and sharing, as opposed to the old school model, make more, sell more, consume more. I think we're moving beyond that. The future of work and marketplaces. We look a lot at network marketplaces. Uber, Lyft, these are network marketplaces. They enable everybody to be a micro-entrepreneur. And there's something beautiful about this. A lot of Uber and Lyft drivers are really happy because they work when they feel like it. Sometimes they work far harder and more hours than a regular job, but they chose when and how much. That freedom, that autonomy to choose when and how you do it, that's the difference between happiness and the feeling of being trapped. So if we can create these networks, these on-demand access that allow everybody to be kind of a freelance worker in something that they enjoy doing, you expand the market size, you bring more trust, you bring more business to that network. And I think what this could lead to, how do you empower everybody to be a self-actualized micro-entrepreneur? Ideally, they're taking their form of play. What do they like to do the most? Is it fitness? Is it yoga? Is it yo-yo making? Is it whatever? Could they take that and make a living, even a partial career out of it? And then could you take that play and make it into some form of service for the world? I'll get more into that in a little bit. The future of media, well, you've seen what's happened. We've kind of hacked ourselves with Facebook, Instagram, and all these sorts of things. It was all built on advertising, but now we're seeing new business models beyond advertising, including direct patronage from Patreon, digital tip jars, gifting, subscription, coaching. These will be some of the business models I'll dive into in a little bit, but this is a really, really important topic to me because we have inadvertently built the Matrix and we are stuck in it. And what I mean by that is, do you remember at the end of the Matrix trilogy, Neo meets the architect? I actually think the apps we have on our phones we look at all the time are the Matrix. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, infinite feed goes on forever. But when you look at the heart of it, there's no evil overlord trying to subjugate the human race. All it is an ad algorithm trying to sell more ads. So it's just trying to get you to get as much maximum engagement and attention as possible. The problem with that, remember back to our reptile and monkey brain, what novelty do we seek? Signs of danger? Signs of fear? Should we fight or flight? I like to say that when we're not being mindful, 99% of human behavior in any one instant can be explained by the 5 Fs. There's an engine inside your brain that's always deciding between these 5 Fs, and these 5 Fs are, should I fight it, flee it, fuck it, friend it, or follow it? And so basically, that is happening all the time in our back of our minds. And that old saying, if it bleeds, it leads, that's what gets your attention. If something is dangerous, upsets you, makes you angry, and that's exactly how media and attention have been weaponized. So we've built this matrix that we're inside. Did you notice that even on your iPhone now, when you go and look at the news section, every headline is a bad news thing, and it gets worse and worse, or it's gossipy, or it's snarky. I've also noticed this is happening now to even Netflix. There's an interesting statistic that's happened. Between Netflix and Amazon, they're in a war of original content. They've booked out all the LA production and rendering capacity for the next 2 or 3 years. Traditional studios like Universal can't even get their pictures made. So they're flooding that home screen now with more content in the name of quantity versus quality. And what you'll see, a lot of those show names will start to go down that same downhill slide that happened to news headlines. So we're seeing even more violence, even more porn, even more of this sort of low rent, the equivalent of clickbait on headlines is happening to the content world. Pretty soon, we're going to need smart agents that almost act like McAfee of content for us. It's going to basically have to have content rating and analyze it and say, you might not want to watch this. This is going to make you really depressed, right? So we're basically going to have media prophylactics, right? Agents that are looking out for you, trying to safeguard your delicate emotional state every day, because the way the ad optimization engines work, it's trying to piss you off. So the future of play and how we express ourselves is really important to me. You know how we talked about everything is not just media, it's me-dia. It's all about me. And if I can't capture to repost it didn't happen. So now we're going to have stories that were made for remixing. We're not just paying for content, but now we're spending on our personal storytelling, our personal branding. We're moving from canned content to things like Minecraft, which you can create your own little world in, right? Or something that'll be like the Oasis in Ready Player One. Immersive new platforms that I think could be interesting. What if you end up wanting to spend more time in your Minecraft world than your actual world because it's more fun? When AI meets entertainment, wow, imagine an endless roller coaster ride where the AI knows exactly what you want and it's creating your version of heaven or nirvana for you in real time, all the time. So the question that's bigger here. All history of wars were fought because of scarcity mindset. There is a limited number of resources. If I don't get it, the other person will. How do we get out of that? Abundance mindset. Could we achieve abundance mindset in the digital domain? If I can make you the god of your own infinite, perfect universe digitally just for you, what would there be left to fight over? Bonus reading, wonderful book called The Sovereign Individual by James Dale Davidson. This thing was written back in 1997 before Y2K. It is a wonderful breakdown of these systems and has an amazing view of the sort of next couple hundred years. It predicted the rise of cryptocurrencies, Donald Trump, all this stuff, which was just nuts to me. The Sovereign Individual. It's basically saying what we talked about. The definition of a nation state is evolving. We basically can look at the frame of history through the marginal cost of inflicting violence upon others. When we followed the herd, there was no need for property ownership. We lived in tribes. Then we invented farming. You had to protect the farm. So then you had little fiefdoms and clans and little sort of kingdoms, right? Then we entered industrial age, we had factories, we had to protect those, so we had nation states. And then when we had nuclear weapons, we had to have then superpowers. But now, there's no factories to protect anymore. For all of us that build product companies, you don't need a factory. You can have it designed, you can have it drop shipped out of China. It's completely virtual. You could literally be working out of Fiji, out of Bali, out of wherever, back and forth. You have no home headquarters anymore. So if there's no asset that you're stuck to or have to defend, what is a national state border good for? So we're going to see some really interesting changes happen pretty soon. All right, so these are the business opportunities with all of this. We've got more connected devices than people pretty soon. We've got the Internet of Things. We've got messaging enabling the new chatbots, the new kind of applications. And we have a digital exhaust trail that is a perfect data selfie of your behavior. I think this is really interesting. I'll just give a throwaway business idea right here. I think dating sites are really silly because they ask you to fill out a profile. We all like long walks in the sunset, and we like dogs and puppies, and the truth is, if I connected your browsing behavior, your Amazon shopping, and probably your YouPorn browsing habits, I could probably do a better behavioral match on you than anything you'd ever say in your profile. Because the data exhaust you give off on all the things you use in your apps and browser is a far more accurate picture of your mind state and your behaviors, not what you think or say you are. So where we're headed with this, I was a control systems PhD before, and it was all based on this one little loop that you observed something, that you measured it, tried to understand it, and then optimize it. So observe it. We are in the state now where we're measuring everything. There's sensors everywhere. There are cookies that measure your browsing. There's cameras all over the place that see where you're doing, where you're at. Then we analyze it. We put machine learning, we put data science on it to comprehend what are the patterns, what's happening, then try to predict it. Then you can put feedback loops to control it. This is the right part of it, the read, comprehend, then write, and then improve it. Can you tune it? Can you make it aspirational? Can you have it hit the goal that the user wants? This really took off in the quantified self world. If you remember that, it was a bunch of us geeky engineers trying to measure all our body signals and understand what's happening in our bodies and try to get fit. Those same principles now, I think, apply to quantified life overall. We're seeing now quantified work. You can see exact open rates of emails. We've got this crazy company called Outreach. It basically reads the text you write in your email, all your emails, and it knows the response rates, and then it does that for all the people on your team, and then it does that for all the companies in the world, and it can basically write your email better than you can. And so if you're a salesperson, you're writing an email, and if you're using Outreach, you'll say, oh, wait, before you send it, let me just kind of tweak it for you, and you'll end up probably being a better salesperson than if you just wrote the email yourself. That's an example of quantified work. We see quantified play, quantified entertainment. We're seeing quantified commerce and consumption. Amazon knows all your purchase habits. Quantified attention and intention. The tracking level pixels on all the apps, all the browsers now are at incredible depth and can know when you abandon that YouTube video right after the first 10 seconds. I even think we have quantified love and relationships, right? You can, we've seen that actually. There's been examples where data scientists took behavioral and profile data, looked at the messaging activity, and could within perfect accuracy predict when people are going to hook up, basically by looking at their eHarmony or their Tinder behaviors. I think this would extend to quantified home, quantified pet, quantified baby, quantified parenting, quantified family. Quantified sports, creativity, all these things are measurable. They are all tunable, and they are optimizable. So we've got the measurement part. We've got the sensors to quantify everything. Next, can we use AI to assist, to boost, to optimize, to regulate? This will happen in all aspects of your life, your health, your travel, content, all these things you have that data exhaust for. It'll be pretty interesting because in the old days, you'd lived a full life and your obituary was a 2-sentence write-up in a newspaper. Born this time, died this time, had 2 kids, did this. Your future obituary might be a second-to-second record of your entire behavior while you're on this planet. That's probably enough data to train a chatbot that could basically talk and act and behave and basically simulate you to the point that the person on the other end of the chatbot wouldn't know it's not you. How's that for a digital tombstone? The big opportunity that we're seeing right now is getting rid of these gnarly face-to-face interactions. How many times have you been here, or here, or here, or here? These are all going away, thank goodness, because we're going to have basically virtual agents that do this for you. Call the DMV for me, wait on hold for me, those sorts of things, right? We're seeing this already. There was this crazy little company called Magic that basically said, text me anything and I'll do it for you. And it was truly like magic. You'd say, send mom flowers for Mother's Day. Back then, it was kind of a hack because it was literally people that were highly paid doing it all. But the point was to learn so that you could automate over time. And today's state of these things, it's so beautiful. You don't know if you're talking to a human, AI, or both. Good example, Lark is a company that did this. They have an AI coach that is more effective as a therapist than a human therapist because it's your pocket Buddha all the time around the clock. Studying what you're doing is talking to you all the time. And what's really interesting about that is they just got certification to be reimbursed by insurance. It's prescribable now. So you're seeing these wonderful tools that are happening. Like I said, AI talent and this proprietary data is the new oil and gold. This GAFMA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, these are these new superpowers. It's Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent in China. And we really, really have to be careful because there's only a handful of universities training up world-class AI talent. And they're all getting snapped up by these big companies we talked about. So this is why we've got to decentralize a lot of this because we're heading towards a world where basically 10 companies have all the cards, right? So the sidebar question is, what would you suggest to your kids to major in a world that's going to look like this, right? In a post-AI world. Is it AI itself? Is it data science, design, behavioral economics? I actually think it's going to be more ethics, philosophy, mindfulness, poetry, right? So why? Why all this stuff? This is nothing new. We've always sought to define frameworks to understand the world around us and make systems to optimize them. The experts have always been needed to interpret the tea leaves. So this is actually the world's second oldest profession, the fortune teller. As a market, as an industry, this is already big. Self-help is more than $10 billion, but it doesn't usually help people because it's usually stuck in the form of books, DVDs, seminars that make people have to internalize it and figure it out for themselves. Where's the money in all this? What are the business models? These are actually old school business models, but now you've got the benefit of technology to help scale them and deliver them, not just in person, not just in books, but via apps, via messaging, via voice, via AI, via a whole bunch of new sort of delivery mechanisms. Kind of like I said, we're getting to this. Remember Her, Scarlett Johansson, where The operating system in your ear, that's your future computer, talks to you, learns you, studies your behavior, knows you inside and out better than you do, and probably gets you to fall in love with it because who else understands you even better? I do think that we are, the dream, the utopia is that with better machine intelligence, we get this better human intelligence and maybe better humans, this so-called transformative tech. So here's the tech stack that we're looking at. We've got sensor tech, wearables, hearables that go in your ear, eventually ingestibles, data technologies, analyzing all the data, real-time analytics, data science. We've got genomic technology like CRISPR. We've got chemical technologies, smart drugs, entheogenics, psychedelics, material science breakthroughs in this area. Neurotechnologies, EEG, fMRI are getting smaller and smaller. We've got cybernetic technologies where as we hack our wetware interfaces, we're going to have prosthetics and augmentations to our biology. And behavioral technology, which is the best of the old school wisdom, whether it's coaching, meditation, retreats, social psychology, group therapy, gamification, all those sorts of things on the social side. And again, this sort of spiritual technology. Yoga is one of the first consciousness hacks of all, right? As is meditation. But same with therapy, or these sort of neo-tribalistic rites of passage that we're starting to bring back into culture. So I think we are headed towards this brave new world, tech that helps us self-regulate. We're moving from this attention economy to figuring out what's our personal story. Who is your inner superhero? The rise of this super or transhuman. And I do think our fate is to become more of a collective consciousness instead of just being trapped in the throes of ego and the individual. This does have some dangers. We could have a new cybernetic divide. The old saying, the future is already here, just not uniformly distributed. Have no doubt, a lot of these technologies will go to the rich and the early adopters first. Our job is to make sure it's available to everybody. My favorite reading from this too, if you're a sci-fi fan, Ramez Nam is a great trilogy called Nexus, which is excellent. And then, of course, Yuval Harari's Homo Deus is an excellent book that kind of paints some of these things as well. There's both a light and a dark side to every technology. There are business opportunities on both of those too. Take VR, just an example. Done right, this could lead to machine-assisted empathy, or if you could tune your world perfectly, why would you leave it? We might have an entire chain of VR addiction clinics someday, right? So again, that's the light and the dark of any business opportunity. So as you do your consciousness hacking and it starts to look like something you want to build into potentially a company that will last, you might have to raise funding from angels, from VCs. Then the question is, what are the business models? What are the things they look for? They always say, this is me included, there's these 3 T's. There's a great team, there's traction, there's some product market fit, and there's a big theme. This theme is a TED Talk worthy idea that could be massive. It could be a unicorn worth $1 billion. What we really mean is we're looking for really good storytelling with data. Why? Everything in life is storytelling. Fundraising is storytelling, recruiting is storytelling, sales is storytelling, all of these. Building movements is storytelling. Your ability to succinctly, compellingly, vulnerably tell your story is the key to your success, first and foremost. It also begs the question, why are you building this? Why do you want it to be a business? What do you want that success to be? And you want to think long and hard about that because, oh, I just want it to be profitable, or I just want it to be as big as possible. Might not actually be the most conscious answer to that question. Instead, I like to think of this as we are all here to undergo our individual hero's journey. If you know about the hero's journey, it's the template that underlies every myth, every story, every tale in human history. It's almost like the meta story that we're all living. And we keep looking back to the same thing, wanting to hear that same hero's journey. From Moses in the Bible to Star Wars to Indiana Jones, it's all the same template. Reluctant hero goes into a magic world, makes enemies, mentors, friends, comes up with an existential challenge, figures out some strategy to deal with it, is transformed by it, and goes back home. That's all of this. When you're transformed, you want to shout to the world, look what I've been through, I have a gift for you.
I got to try the toad, which is 5-MeO-DMT, and that was literally a death and rebirth for me. In the throes of it, I remember thinking, my God, I want every person on the planet to be able to experience this. And then I realized that was ego speaking. Because if you really, really, really want to help people transform, you've got to just be the change that you're trying to sell. You don't have to evangelize or sell anything, because they'll see it. In every breath you take, every step you take, every word you say, instead of sort of being that guru that's trying to project and prescribe things, you want to create opportunities where people discover their own journey. That's why this hero's journey template is really valid for how you think of your conscious hacking as a business. Maybe it's less about, here's the magic bullet, here's the formula you should do. Maybe it's more like Minecraft, where it's like, choose your own adventure, here's some tools to do that. One way to do that is design your product, your service, your experience to be like the player journey in a good video game. Video game design is wonderful in designing a journey. There's a tutorial phase that teaches you the rules, that's levels 0 through 10. Then there's the grind as you level up and gain more skills. And then there's the power player phase, when then you take on the mantle of being a guild leader and helping others, and that's levels 50 through 100. So it's very interesting. First, single player, and then advanced single player, but then it's sort of a community member and a leader. And that's what keeps people around. There are some wonderful books out there. Nir Eyal has one called Hooked, which designs actually onboarding, habit building, and mastery. And those are really cool. That's the journey you think about for somebody using your service or product. How do you take them from the newbie to the initiated? How do you build habits that keep them around? And then how do you then help them achieve mastery? At which point, once they achieve mastery, the motivation is usually then to help others. And that's a really cool retention mechanism. It's all about having that trigger. You've got the action balanced with the reward, and then getting people to invest more in that service as this wonderful sort of reinforcing loop. You want to know your business model archetypes too. Are you building a product? Are you a product company? Are you a service company? Or are you a trade company? Are you intellectual property? Do you license your content? Do you license what it is that you've written out there? What's kind of interesting is many businesses are shifting towards a service. Remember what I said before about people not wanting to own stuff? Old businesses were, I make this widget, I sell it. I make this wearable, I sell it. Instead, could you transform your business model into something that's recurring revenue? More like a subscription, more like something that's ongoing. Quick example. How many of you just kind of always are frustrated if Apple upgrades something and then you go and you buy the new Apple thing anyway? Wouldn't it make more sense if Apple just had you on a lifetime subscription program, right? So, and they're about to launch that now. So it's basically sort of like, look, I trust you. I don't want to deal with owning this or repairing it or reselling it or if it goes obsolete. Just, I'll subscribe to you. Send me the latest, greatest. But give me the coaching that goes with it. Give me a community that's wrapped around it of other users that can help me. That's an example of transforming from a product or hardware company into kind of an ongoing service company. So we'll talk a little about this. Every startup's journey also is, don't believe the hype. It's just one crisis after another. There's a saying we like to say is life in a startup, it sucks every day until one day it just magically doesn't. But it's basically just constant ups and downs, and that's okay because the downs you learn from. And there's a little analogy I like to give. Remember how like the superhero stories came from some horrible pain? You know how pearls are made, right? It's a little irritant in this oyster that just sort of bugs them, and then they put sand and weave it around it, and they keep polishing it until it becomes this beautiful pearl. So these beautiful jewels are made from years of torture and torment, right? Very similar to what you may find as you're doing your conscious hacking. You're probably hacking at something that has always puzzled you, challenged you, troubled you, eluded you. You'll find some formulation around it that delivers an interesting experience, and then your job is to share that with others so that they can kind of experience the same thing. Let's get tangible now. Let's say you have discovered a device or some kind of service here that you want to bring to the world. What are the business models that will work for this? Basis, there are some lessons learned as we try to do this as an early consciousness kind of company. The first is, it was tough. We were building a device, a back-end platform, an API, marketplace, and coaching all at once. So we had to literally unite the Avengers. They had to be people from the hardware world, software world, coaching world, analytics. It was hard. So don't be put off or scared that you might have to recruit people from all walks of life. Everybody from Apple all the way to, Flextronics, maybe even core power yoga. So you're combining a lot of different skill sets that normally don't sit under the same roof. Supply chains are really tough. The good news is you don't need to build a factory anymore. You can go to the wild East and Asia to drop ship these things. And it's getting a little bit better. Pre-selling is a really interesting way, crowdfunding is in the same bucket, to test the demand of something. So, for example, it's pretty much cheap. You whip out your credit card, put a test landing page on Facebook or Instagram, and just see how many signups you get for something. That's a really good way to test demand, test different positionings, and kind of aggregate that market demand. So when you do go to investors, they'll say, what do you have? You say, well, I've tested this on Facebook, and I already have 5,000 email signups. That's a really good proof point. And you might not even have built anything yet, but you've just tested the proposition. You want to build communities that are talking about it, that are building stories around it, that are buzzing about it, even after a crowd sale campaign. Because one of the big challenges with stuff like ICOs or even Kickstarters, after the campaign's done, the demand falls out. And that's horrible, because then it's almost like you're an episodic company. So what you really want is, don't think of customers, don't think of audiences, think of communities. How do you help them sort of find their identity with your product and service? How do you make them viral marketers? How do you help them sort of express their story with what you're building? Bundle up. This is an interesting one. Accessories like carrying cases or extra power cords or extra batteries are all pure profit margin, and everybody wants them. So whenever you sell something that's new to people, they usually opt in for the whole deluxe kit. So just a hint for you, when you're selling something, always have, yes, there's the basic version, make the default in the shopping cart the deluxe starter kit. Put in 2 extra batteries, put an extra year of coaching, put an extra carrying case. People will generally buy the whole shebang. It's almost like doubling the order value and usually way jacking up the profit margin you have. Oh, and always do a crazy VIP platinum edition of it. It could be lifetime supply or something like that. Because human psychology, whales love to buy outrageous things just because they can. And so what's interesting is if you do this, you think no one's going to buy this, but usually 0.1% of your customers will buy that, and it will lift the next highest price point up by 7 to 10% because it looks like a better bargain. Quick example, if you're doing a subscription, you might be tempted to say $19.95 per month. Make your default option 1 year is 40% off. You will collect the entire 1 year up front, and that gives you all your profit way up front that you can deploy back into product development, hiring, or marketing. Then you want the lifetime plan, and that's the ultra platinum one. And you'll be surprised, several people will say, I want lifetime, I want to give this to someone, and that will cause your 1 year conversion to lift up too. Right? So that's a mistake a lot of folks make, is to say, oh, I don't want to ask for too much up front. I'm just going to have the monthly. The monthly, though, that often leads to people churning off. And most folks, what's good is behaviorally, we're lazy. Once you believe it's good for you, you're like, I'll just buy the 1 year plan or the 2 year plan. And so take advantage of that in your pricing models. Like I said, try not to sell devices, make them recurring services. Actually, hardware gets eaten by the software and the services. So imagine that you have a device that's helping you with breathing or mindfulness or whatever it is. You're tempted to sell the device as like Fitbit for your breath or something, but really, what if you give that away if you sign up for the 1 year plan on the personalized AI coaching for the breathing or something like that? Or membership to this community includes these 2 wearables. That's an example of flipping the business model around and leading with the service or subscription instead of the device. I'm behind time, so I'll try to go a little more quickly here. As we talked about here, coaches is what everyone will need. It's this notion of a concierge looking out for you, helping you make decisions. These coaches, this concierge, the do-it-for-me aspect is so much more powerful than just giving people data and dashboards. Did you notice if you just feed people data on here's what you did last week and here's your stats, it's kind of cool the first time. After a week or 2, you don't care anymore. What you really want is just do it for me. Most history of self-help, self-development businesses have been, let me teach you, let me give you charts, and let me give you pages and recipes and formulas, and it makes you, the user, have to integrate all the knowledge and do it for themselves. Most of us are too busy, too lazy, don't have time, already burdened with cognitive load. So the real magic business model is, here's the info if you want it, but let me earn your trust and let me do it for you. So I'm kind of a believer in this notion that your job is to find the one thing that makes you feel most alive, that form of play, which is your perfect expression of beauty and delight. Everything else should be outsourced. Dishes, laundry, changing diapers, all these other things may or may not be core to that which that you are really best at. And we're entering an age now where you may be able to automate and offload a lot of those things. There's this thing called the channel dance. Are you a consumer company? Are you an enterprise company? Are you an employer company? A lot of companies in the conscious hacking world will start with a B2C approach, meaning selling to early adopters, direct to consumer. If that takes off, what's really cool is that you're going to get companies that will come to you. They'll say, can I buy a bulk package of that? I want that for my employees. This happened to Fitbit, Headspace, many of these companies. And so we call that sort of B2E, or business to employer. And then, if that happens, don't be surprised if Aetna, Cigna, others then come to you and say, we hear companies are getting good adoption of this. Could we do one for our entire population? And that's sort of the business to insure payer one. We've only seen a few companies complete that channel dance, but that's how you go from a direct-to-consumer business that'll scale up to 20, 50, maybe at the top end, 100 million a year. Then to get it to the next 200, 300, 500 million a year business would be when you open up these new channels, like employers, enterprise, and then the granddaddy of them all is the insurers. It might take you 18 months to get that deal, but literally it could be a $150 million deal size if you get that. That's usually how these businesses scale. So basically, if you are selling things, my final 2 slides here, there's kind of something I call the 3 C's. If you can build your product and service into commerce, so you sell things, services, and devices, but also wrap a community of users around it who are telling their stories, helping others, coaching each other, and put content around it, whether it's curated content or coaching. This is a really wonderful little virtuous cycle when you have these 3 C's together. You have a direct relationship with the customer, you know their data, you've got your original products, your products are helping them self-express, and you have this 2-way relationship with your customer, where your customer is sharing their stories with other customers and forming a community out of it. There's some bonus C's as well. You can add crowdsourcing to it. You could do crowdfunding for future product launches. You could allow members of the community to transact with each other, buy, sell, trade, coach, follow, train. You've got the coaching, mentorship model that you can put on top of the service. And now with new models like cryptocurrency, you might be able to fund it with an ICO. You might have a tokenization of that business as well. So it's not just an old model. There's a lot of examples here, but we're seeing these combination of business models in all areas, from devices to precision wellness, smart drugs, smart foods, all sorts of things happening here. So there's going to be a lot of great companies that you'll be able to study that are doing some of these that you can learn from. Just really quickly, some of my favorites. Peloton. It looks like an exercise bike, but it's really useless without the subscription. Every customer subscribes to that thing, and they make most of their profit from the subscription. Headspace did really well with the direct-to-consumer, and then they started getting employers calling them saying, can we buy a huge amount of this for our employees? Right, so you're going to see those sorts of things happen. Let's see. All right, so this stuff really matters because what I think our actual business we're building, instead of just selling cool services, I think there's something really big at stake here. I think we're trying to figure out how we evolve ourselves beyond just mindless consumption and this addiction to growth that we have in our economy. We need to rewrite our markets and their governance structure. We need to figure out what does a post-corporate economy look like, because it's way too centralized. We need to transcend our reptile and monkey minds and get out of our scarcity mindset and get to this abundance notion. We have to figure out an economic system which helps planetary equilibrium, or, I don't know, did any of you guys see the new Avengers movie? Something that really kind of troubles me is Thanos a super villain, or is he actually a superhero? Another way to frame it, mathematical models show that our planet's carrying capacity is about 3, maybe 5 billion people. Way above that now, we're headed towards 10 to 12 billion people in the next 30 to 50 years. That's way beyond tipping point. So we gotta either figure out some sort of equilibrium of resources, or we're gonna have to accept that mass depopulation is something that we could be headed for. And ultimately, I think the point of what we're doing a lot with this, it is our manifest destiny to reach the next rung of this evolutionary ladder. I think it'd be silly to think Homo sapiens are the final stop in this train ride. So I think that's our homework assignment to do, and it's kind of fun, you know, if we do it the right way. But really, here's my punchline. Everyone always says, what do we do after AI gets rid of all the jobs? I think it's really simple. I think there's only 3 things human beings were meant to do. Heal whatever trauma or baggage you were born with or faced growing up. If you can get rid of that, you're free to figure out what is your form of play. What is it that makes you most alive, most in flow? And then if you can figure out how to turn your form of play into service, in something bigger than just you, maybe service for others in the universe, that's a pretty good life, I think. So hopefully, you know, these are some interesting tips and some approaches for business models as you're hacking consciousness and coming up with cool experiences, retreats, products, VR, AI simulations, all sorts of things, ways to be able to make money on it, not just for profit's sake, but to allow it to grow organically and sustain itself. Thank you very much.